What if the simplest acts, which is choosing what we put on our plates every day, had the power to change the world and create a kinder, healthier future for all of us? Welcome to another episode of Health, Happiness, and Planet. I'm your host, Juan, and today we are diving into a conversation that challenges how we think about food, parenting, and the power of everyday choices. Joining us is Naomi Hallum, CEO of Generation Vegan, or also known as GenV, a global nonprofit supporting plant-based living for the good of our health, our environment, and the animals we share this planet with. She is also the voice behind Raising GenV, a podcast that explores what it means to raise compassionate kids in a world that doesn't always align with those values. Naomi is no stranger to pushing boundaries. She's made headlines with her bold offers of £1 million to the UK Prime Minister and $1 million to Barack Obama and other prominent leaders to adopt a vegan diet for 1 month. Through these initiatives, Naomi inspires people worldwide to rethink their relationship with food. Beyond her activism, she's a mom raising her child on a plant-based diet, showing that true compassion begins at home. Whether you are a parent, a curious listener, or someone exploring the vegan topic, if you care about the future of our planet and all its inhabitants, this episode offers insights, inspiration, and a whole lot of heart. Do not miss this inspiring conversation with Naomi. Let's explore how everyday choices can shape a brighter future for all. You are listening to Health, Happiness, and Planet podcast, where we explore different ways to boost our well-being, live a more fulfilling life, and protect our planet. Join me as I chat with inspiring people and professionals from all over the world, uncovering strategies for improving our lifestyles and nurturing our precious planet. I am Juan, and this podcast is proudly brought to you by Wave Business Excellence Footprint, my digital training company that cares about your career and personal development. I am passionate about making the world a better place, so if you share my enthusiasm, this show is for you. Together, we can steer towards a healthier, happier life while leaving a positive footprint on our beautiful Earth. Join me as we explore how being healthy, happy, and caring for our planet are all connected. Hello, Naomi, and welcome to the Health, Happiness, and Planet podcast. It's so great to have you here.
It's so great to be here.
It's such an honor to have you in this show. And when I was creating a list of questions for you, I was wondering how we're going to pack this all in 60 minutes. Let's start with the basics. The first question that I ask every guest who enters the show is, what was your path to get where you are today? How did you become the CEO of GenV?
Wow. I don't know, actually. But here I am. No, I would say a kind of pivotal moment for me was when I moved continents. So I moved from the UK to the US. And so I was going through a period of transition in my personal life. I was getting all of my paperwork in order, and I was, unable to work for about 12, 18 months. So when you're unable to work, but you're someone who's been very accustomed to working all their life, you go, well, what can I do with myself? What am I passionate about? And around that time, I watched a documentary that many people know of, but some may not, called Cowspiracy, which just, blew my mind. I thought, why has it taken me 30 years of my life to know this very important stuff? And that kind of really inspired what I decided to do with my time for those next sort of 12, 18 months. I thought, I want to learn more. So I went down the rabbit hole and I read the books and watched all the other documentaries and, tried to get as much information on this subject as I could. I took some online courses, one of which was the eCornell plant-based nutrition course, which I thought was fantastic. And and then I was like, well, where can I get some work experience in this sector? So I started doing some volunteer work with PETA, with animal charity evaluators, with Veganuary, and just, kind of came to the unexpected decision that I don't want to work in corporate marketing anymore. I want to work in the vegan movement. I want to work doing something that helps to create a better world for people and animals, something, in the animal rights space, the sustainability space, the vegan space, right? I became, 100% sure of that in that time. That was what I was supposed to be doing. And luckily, kind of around the time I was ready to get back into work, I saw Matthew Glover, the founder of Veganuary, was searching for a campaign manager for a new project that he was going to be launching. I think he was planning to launch it in beginning of 2018. But anyway, yeah, so I reached out to him about that. And a few months later, I was working for Million Dollar Vegan, preparing for their first campaign, which was to challenge Pope Francis to go vegan for Lent.
Wow, that's amazing. Somehow it took its own dynamic. Yeah, somehow when you already made that decision, that's what I'm going to do. And then the universe just unfolded in that direction where you really brought you in the fast lane straight to that point where you are today.
Yes. My life has actually been full of unexpected turns, but it's such a great one, such an unexpected one, never in a million years. And I think a lot of vegans would say this. Did I think I would, one, become a vegan, and two, completely pivot my career towards working in the vegan movement? But I have, and honestly, best thing I've ever done. And like most vegans, just wish I'd have done it sooner.
Yeah, absolutely. It brings me back to the moment when I turned vegan, and it just feels like if I just close my eyes, it just feels like it just happened like a moment ago. And because it's so real, that moment when I made that decision.
Right.
So the moment when I made the switch, when I saw the documentary, well, it's not a documentary, it's actually the video that was on YouTube from Dr. Michael Greger, and he gave like a summary of the top things that you are probably going to die from. So we were looking at the statistics, and at that time I was still working for the corporate world, and I was very like database, and he was just bringing the data. He was just throwing data at me, and I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing what he's talking about. And that was like 10 years ago. At that point of time, I was not doing so well health-wise, and I was thinking, that's awkward because I'm not really old. So, but I'm already I'm already taking medication for blood pressure. I'm taking medication for cholesterol. I had reflux, and I had allergies, and I had, and the list would just go on and on and on. I just told my wife, look, this person here, this Dr. Greger, is giving so much information, and I'm just blown away by it. Let's put it to the test, as he would say. Let's just put it to the test. And we did a pilot phase, and we said, let's do it for 3 months. And my wife is like, okay, but when are we going to start? And I said, we're going to start today. Today's going to be the day. So yeah, but we still got like chicken and stuff in the fridge. I was like, sorry, I cannot eat it. I'm just going to start right now. And I did the switch like from one moment to the next. I didn't do that gradual transition. I went just straight on, and I said, okay, if we're going to do it, I'm just going to do it all the way. So I would say probably at the beginning it was quite challenging for me because I was eating meat probably twice, maybe even 3 times a day. Now, if I look back, I'm just thinking to myself like, wow, what was I thinking? How did I even get to that place? To be eating so much meat and eating so much dairy products, and no wonder I was feeling so bad. And then within that 3-month period, my health changed. I started getting much healthier. My allergies started disappearing, and my body just started to heal. And that's where it was this eye-opening moment where I said, okay, after 3 months, that was my pilot phase. I'm definitely going to continue this. And I'm just going to do my blood test every 6 months just to be sure that everything is fine. And those were the times where I was not so sure, is this really going to be good for my health on the long term or not? So now I've been doing since 10 years my blood work every year roundabout. And my doctor's like, hey, you're like a 20-year-old guy, yeah? So therefore, we stuck to it. But probably, as you know, once you turn that direction, then suddenly other things start opening, yeah? Like this is actually good for the planet. This is actually good for our animals. This is even good for reducing the chances of pandemics and so forth. There were just so many other things. There was so much a win-win-win-win situation in that scenario. So now my question for you is, how did you then become vegan? Was it also the health aspect, or was it some other reason?
Yeah, I think you've mentioned something important there, that is, a lot of people go vegan for a specific reason. And those that stay vegan tend to have adopted additional reasons to support that choice, right? Because I think if you just go vegan for health reasons, it's very easy to fall off the track. It's like me saying, I'm never going to eat, donuts again. And then
Yeah.
2 weeks later, somebody puts a really tasty looking donut in front of me and I'm like, well, I'll just have this one. But if there's like 10 other reasons why you don't want to have that donut, right, then you're definitely not going to have that donut. And so for me, I definitely would say it started as an ethical decision, primarily. For me, it wasn't as big a switch, but it was still a significant switch. I actually went vegetarian when I was 10 years old. Well, I say vegetarian, I was still eating fish. And that was because my mom, so this is like, early 90s, my mom was like, you can't not eat any meat. You will not grow tall. You will be unwell. You will not get any protein. And I was 10, so I didn't know any better. And I said, oh, yeah, okay, well, but I don't want to eat animals. And she said, okay, well, how about we compromise? And, I'll support you, but you got to eat something like, fish. And I said, okay, deal. I'll eat fish, but I don't eat any other animals. And she was like, okay, deal. So I think she hoped it would just be a little phase, but I was very strong-willed child. And so, so from sort of age 10, I never ate meat and I never looked back on that. That was kind of just an easy decision, I think, for me personally. And it really was 20 years later that I watched Cowspiracy. So for 20 years, there was no reason given to me really to go beyond just not eating meat. When I saw Cowspiracy, I realized that whether it's meat or dairy or fish or eggs, it's all part of the same cruel system. And it's a system that we don't need and that does neither our planet nor our bodies good. So at that point, I was like, so all this time I've been eating fish and been pounding the cheese because one, I like it, but two, because I thought I needed some sort of animal product in my diet. And now that I know that I don't and that it's not good for me and it's not good for the planet, why on earth would I continue doing it? And then, of course, there's that part of you that goes, but I really like it. How am I going to give up cheese? This is like, everybody says to me, like, oh, I could never give up cheese, right? The non-vegans that I know. And I'm like, do you know that that's what everybody says? Like, that's what everybody says. And yet, funnily enough, we vegans did. Because at some point, I think you think, well, what matters more to me, right? The taste of cheese or my values. Exactly. And I just thought, this doesn't align with my values. I don't eat meat because I don't like the idea of animals being killed. And yet animals are killed for eggs, for dairy, not directly for that product that you're consuming, but in order for that product to exist, animals must die, right? And I think that just made me realize that now I cannot continue to eat this stuff. Yeah. So a bit like you, the day I had this realization was the day I stopped. I said, as of today, I'm not going to eat any more dairy or eggs or fish. And I don't know how that's going to go. I don't know how that's going to make me feel. I didn't really have an in-depth understanding of the nutrition side of things, but I said, let's do a 30-day challenge, right? So I did. So I did a 30-day challenge, not a well-known one, just one I kind of Googled and was the first one I found at the time. And I did it and I didn't die and I didn't feel weak and and it's an experimental time, isn't it? I think the first time you try a random vegan cheese or a random plant-based milk, you go, oh, this is not tasting like what I'm used to, right? And you think, I can't do this. But then you realize, like, the dairy cheese world, there's hundreds of brands to choose from, and you're not going to like them all, but some you are really going to like, and they're not going to taste the exact same, because how would they? They're not coming from a cow's udder, but they taste good. And so I think over the coming months, it was a decision I became confident was not a bad decision in terms of my health, and was the right decision in terms of my values. And it became easier over time because I found products that were very good replacements for the products I'd eaten before. So I guess that's a long way of saying it started for the ethics, but health was, important. Everybody wants to be healthy. And I think that fear of not being on a vegan diet is what frightens a lot of people. And as anyone who's seen Cowspiracy will know, that really is a film about the environmental impact of animal agriculture. So that part mattered to me too. Yeah. So it all mattered, but the ethics was the key driver. Mm-hmm. And it's not until I, like you, went on that journey of looking into all of the other aspects of a vegan diet, to make sure it was healthy, that I actually started to take a real interest in nutrition for the first time. And so, yeah, if any point along the way I'd suddenly lost that value, lost that belief that, an animal's life matters more than my sandwich,
Yeah.
I even then would stick with it because now I know it's really, really healthy, probably the healthiest diet for me as well. And it's because of that belief, that health belief, that I'm choosing to raise my daughter vegan
Mhm.
because I can't decide what her values are for her, but I have to give her the foods that I think are going to nourish her the most.
Yeah.
And for that reason alone, I'm never going to give her a glass of cow's milk or pork sausage.
Yeah, that's so true. And when I listen to what other people say, that especially the topic that you mentioned about cheese, because it is so addictive.
Mm,
The thing is, what I also always try to give some confidence to the other, I say, look, if you just try it out after a certain number of weeks, and in my case, it was about 6 weeks later, that it wasn't like an off switch where my desire to eat cheese or any type of dairy product was just for one moment to the next, it was just gone. It was like, wow, I don't need to think
yeah.
about that anymore. And suddenly my taste buds just started changing and I started craving other things. I started craving salads and I started craving
Mm,
all of these goodies that we know today in the plant-based world, that my body is like, hey, that's even better than what I had before.
yeah.
Especially that I feel so good after the meal. Yeah, that you see, okay,
Right.
how did I feel before when I finished my meal, and how were my energy levels? How was my vitality and my whole feeling and my focus and my brain fog? Yeah, how was it? Yeah, compared to today when I'm having a plant-based meal. And it's just like day and night. That's something that I like to remind people to say, look, are your taste buds addicted to that cheese or eating meat? Yeah, in my case, the first couple of days after I stopped, when we were having lunches with my colleagues at work, I felt like I could just jump on their plate and just grab that piece of meat. And I do not know if you remember that movie for kids from Madagascar. And
Mm.
there's this lion from Madagascar where he was really hungry and he was seeing all his friends like little steaks like jumping
Steaks.
around. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was just like watering his mouth. And that's how I felt. I would say the first 2 to 3 weeks after I
Mm,
stopped. But then after that, it was really like that off switch and it was just gone. And I was like, wow, it's amazing. I could see somebody eat a T-bone steak right next to me and nothing would happen. I would not have no reaction. I would just look at
yeah.
it. I would say, well, poor animal. And I would just continue with my salad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or whatever I was eating. So that is something that I try to explain to people that they do not have to feel that they're deprived of something. And after you enter to the world of plant-based foods, I feel that there's more diversity
It's
in the
more
taste.
abundant. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's more abundant
exactly.
than meat eaters realize because they are very much stuck in this kind of box of
Yeah,
eating these foods that they know and are familiar with. And it's like you
exactly.
say, you open the box when you stop eating those foods. And then you realize that beyond the box, there's a much bigger box of different foods that you never knew existed and you never tried,
Yeah,
and you get to try them all. And it's just really liberating, actually.
exactly. And this is something that a lot of people, I think that's a misconception where they hear that I'm vegan and they were like, okay, but what do you eat? Yeah, do you like only eat flowers the whole day? And they're like, well,
Well, yeah, some
maybe.
days.
Yeah, exactly.
But I like it.
Yeah. So that was the other thing that I'm so grateful for getting to know that other part of the world, because before I was just used to, like you said, like this box type of thinking where you say, okay, today is either chicken, turkey, or beef. And then how am I going to combine it with rice, with potatoes, or one string bean next to it? Yeah. And that's like,
Yeah.
more or less that was it. Yeah. And then you just do different combinations from time to time, maybe eat a pizza from time to time. And that was like what I was eating before, thinking that I was super healthy by eating that way.
Hmm.
But then the box opened and something totally different happened. And then I was like, wow, what is this? What is quinoa? What is buckwheat? What is, and then at the end, also the way how you prepare the food, you're using all the spices. Just like you're using spices to spice up your chicken breast steak or something, you can use spices in the plant-based world as well. So at
Hmm.
the end, if you just eat a chicken without spicing it up, it's still not going to taste like anything. So the same thing
Hmm.
in the plant-based world, then maybe it will just taste a bit bland. But that's something that people also do not realize, that you can make it just as tasty or colorful as any other types of meals. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the versatility of tofu alone. I remember in my pre-vegan days, the only way in which I'd ever had tofu was kind of in like a miso soup at a Japanese restaurant, and
Yeah.
which is just like cubed, boiled, bland tofu, right? It doesn't taste of anything. And so I know that whenever my non-vegan friends hear that I'm making some tofu, that's what they think of, because that's what I used to think of.
Yeah.
And they think, ugh, I couldn't eat that. But it's
That's a
like, you
good.
have no idea until you start experimenting how versatile it is and how delicious it can be and how you can make it crunchy or chewy or,
Yeah.
into a kind of egg-like scramble. Whatever you want to do with it, you can do with it. And it's so healthy and protein rich and helps to repress the growth of cancers in our body. I mean, it's just this amazingly versatile food. But wow, I'm just like, my old self, if I heard my current self saying this, would be like, what happened to you?
Yeah, yeah. Who are you?
Yeah. What's this obsession you have with tofu? But yeah, I'll admit I'm a bit obsessed now.
Yeah, wow. And one thing I'm very curious about, because now as you are in this space for so many years, what do you think is the demographics? Like if you could see the distribution, if you have like that pie chart, how many percentage of the people are first entering this world for the animals, or how many are entering it because of health or the planet? What do you think is usually the entry point? Which is the most frequent entry point for most people?
I think it very much varies depending on where the person is from, the age group, their sex, their interests. For example, I know if you ask Veganuary why most people are signing up to do Veganuary, it's for ethical reasons. But then if you look at the type of content they're putting out on social media, it's very much about the ethics of the diet
Hmm.
predominantly. And therefore, people that is resonating with are going to be the animal lovers, the people with those types of values. And therefore, that's going to kind of skew the data towards it being majority people signing up for ethics, because we do different campaigns that focus on different aspects of people going vegan at GenV. We've done campaigns where we've really pushed the climate change message, and everybody who has then taken a vegan pledge with us has done so for environmental reasons. We pushed a campaign called Make America Healthy Again, which was all about the health benefits. And then 95% of our signups were coming from people who were interested in the nutritional side of things. So I honestly think a diverse approach to getting people on board with veganism is really important, because everybody has their own unique why. And I think people might often have many whys. I was someone who was always interested in animals and ethics, always interested in nature and the natural world, and always interested in health, right?
Yeah.
But I certainly could say of a lot of my friends, like, that person there, they do not care about animals, do not care, cannot connect with a fish, never have, never will. But they do care about health.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely a good mix out there. I would say largely ethics and the health arguments
Mhm.
are the ones that resonate the most, because they seem to have more of an emotional power within people. You often hear people saying, I love animals or I love food, but it's less frequent to hear somebody say, I love the planet. They might say, I care about it. But
Mhm.
to have that kind of emotional connection to something so vast and obscure is
Yeah.
is less likely. But I also think that may change, because if you look at like college kids today, they're very sustainability minded. They're very
Mhm.
aware of climate change. They're living in a time where the effects of climate change are all around them. This wasn't my experience in college. I didn't know anything about climate change when I was in college, but I think today the kids do. They're very aware. And so we may even see a shift in the next 5-10 years of people actually becoming very passionate and emotionally connected to the climate change issue, and therefore that being a primary, if not the primary reason of why people are going to change their diets.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, it's not a simple answer. I think it changes, but I do think it's an important point at this stage to say that there's a big difference, right, between being a vegan
Mhm.
and having a plant-based lifestyle. And having a plant-based lifestyle means you are just conscious about eating plants, right? Eating
Yeah.
a certain way. Whereas being a vegan means not only are you concerned about what you eat, you're concerned about all the other ways in which you might have a negative impact on others. And therefore,
Yeah.
it's a philosophical approach to your entire life.
Mhm.
And I think if you have that philosophical approach, it's probably almost
Yeah.
entirely for the animals.
Exactly. And that's where you can go down so many other rabbit holes.
Mm,
Yeah. Like when you say, well, I'm going to purchase my next car. And it's like, okay, that car has leather seats.
mm,
Where do these leather seats come from? How are they being produced and so forth? And then you start thinking like, oh my God, I cannot buy that car with leather seats. Yeah.
yeah,
And then you start doing other type of decision making at that point of time. Actually, almost anything that you buy nowadays, you just could go in the wrong direction. So
yeah,
now the habit that we have at home, we say, okay, in case we do have to purchase anything new, we're first going to do a little bit of research on how was the product being created,
right.
where was it created, what type of resources were needed, and how long is the lifetime of that product, what happens the afterlife,
Mhm.
is it properly being disposed of, and all that afterlife process.
Yeah,
So that's very important. But perhaps one more thing to my question that I asked about, which are the reasons that most people initially start to go this direction of thinking about transitioning to vegan, because I think it's has a lot to do with the storyline that helps us, for example, those who want to win others to open their eyes,
hmm,
is how do we now adjust our storyline for those who are interested for their health? How do we adjust the storyline for those who are interested for the animals or for the ethical part, and for those who are interested in not having another pandemic? Yeah, so therefore we just have to somehow see how do we reach the masses, yeah,
hmm,
for those so that we know that the information that we're giving out there is really touching people where we need to touch them.
hmm.
Perfect. So that really helps me as well. So thanks for that answer, because at Health, Happiness, and Planet project that I'm doing in my company, I'm always trying to see how can I touch most people's hearts so that they can
Right.
think about it. Yeah.
Right. And I always say, start by asking people, what do you care about? And
Yeah.
then let them know how that is connected to the consumer choices that they make. And as you will have discovered, you may start researching the car you're going to buy because you don't want it to contribute to animal suffering. But at the same time, you'll find out when you start to research. While it may or may not contribute to animal suffering, it probably contributes to other forms of suffering, human suffering, environmental suffering.
Yeah.
And I think it's impossible as a vegan not to have your eyes open to all the different forms of suffering and impact and exploitation in the world, and to start to care about them. And I think that's an important thing to say, because there's a misconception that vegans only care about animals, right? And
Yeah.
we actually just care about the impact we're having on others. And that seems to be predominantly animals because of the food system that we have today. But, once you look at it and you find out that everything has some level of impact, and we live in an imperfect world, it's just for everyone, vegan or not, about asking yourself, do you want to have, the softest footprint, the most positive impact you can on this world? Or don't you care at all? And if you do care, then look into everything that you're about to buy, whether it's the food or the car or the piece of clothing, and decide if that's the best choice to make. And if there's maybe a better choice that has a softer impact on the world and the things that you care about. And I think naturally that will encourage people to make kinder choices when it comes to food, but also in other parts of their lives.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so true. And that makes me now curious about GenV as a company. I've been looking into your beautiful website. So also congrats to you and to your team
Thank you.
for creating such a nice website. And especially that it's divided for those who are thinking about the transition to try it out, and for those who already have done the transition and would like to do a bit more. So that's what I found very attractive, because there's something for everyone. If you could just give us a little bit of further information about GenV and what do you offer?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're here to kind of help to educate people about many detriments of our current food system and the many benefits of adopting a vegan or plant-based lifestyle. And we're giving people the opportunity to choose the version of that lifestyle that is most aligned with what matters to them. So on our website, you can find resources, whether you're ready to commit to 30 full days of being vegan, whether are not interested in the dietary side, but you just like to make kinder choices in your everyday life. We have challenges that help you just make more environmentally conscious choices, challenges that help you make healthier choices. And then, yeah, if you do care about the suffering of farmed animals, we have challenges, or should I say pledges, where you can commit to living in a way that reduces suffering the most. So whatever your interest is in potentially leaning towards or adopting a full vegan lifestyle, then we've got the resources for you, and they're free and they're very much tailored to your interests, not ours.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's really nice. It's so complete. And I think one of the things that I usually say to the people who I speak with is that, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be this, 100% get everything just right the first time. Just start. Just start with something, and you can start gradually. Some people cannot do that cold switch like I did,
Right.
or like you did, from one day to the next. Some have to do it. Okay, maybe I do only 3 times a week I will have my meat dish, and then let's see how I feel. And then maybe I reduce it to only 2 days a week and see how I feel. So it's just more like, for some people, they feel more comfortable with a slower transition. And therefore, I think that is something that many people might feel a little bit intimidated when they say, wow, but it's a big, big change to be from where I'm today to becoming a full-blown vegan who thinks about all types of things, even
Right.
when they buy other type of products that has nothing to do with food. So therefore, I think that's one of the things where I just say everybody at their pace and does the best as they can. And
Yeah.
main thing that we are just continuously going the right direction, and we are tuning in with our intuition, saying, well, what is my intuition saying? Is it something better? Do I feel better? Yes or no? And then you can still decide what you want to do tomorrow.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I fully agree. And I think that as vegan advocates, we often forget that it's not that easy for everybody. It might not be that easy because, it's just such a huge switch for them. But it also might not be that easy because they don't have any information about the nutritional aspects. They can't cook. They don't have access to fresh produce. There's a lot of hurdles that some people have and others don't. And I think we have to be respectful of that. I remember I was giving a talk to the kids from a US Boys and Girls Club. And for those that don't know, the Boys and Girls Club is it's a sort of nationwide nonprofit that provides resources and a sense of community for children in very underprivileged communities. And I wanted to go in and show them how they could make vegan ice cream by just blending up some frozen bananas, right? Pretty simple,
yeah.
I thought. And I was about to go in and do that. And one of the Boys and Girls Club directors said to me, you do realize that these kids do not have access to a blender and may not even have access to a kitchen or bananas. And I was like, what? And it's like, yeah, like their lives are pretty rough. So that kind of made me realize, how kind of tone deaf vegan advocacy can be, and how it is so important to meet people where they're at and try and understand what their situation is, what is possible for them individually, and just support them at that level, as opposed to being like, you got to go full vegan today if you care about the animals. If not, I'm going to be pissed.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to work for a lot of people.
That's right. Time for a quick break to mention that the sponsor of this podcast is Wave Business Excellence Footprint, a digital training company deeply committed to your career development, personal growth, and the well-being of our precious planet. Dive into a wealth of knowledge with over 20 courses available on our website, www.wave-bef.com. Tailored for both managers and employees aspiring to become tomorrow's leaders. One of our best-selling courses is the Presentation and Communication Skills Training, perfect for those creating and delivering presentations in their companies. Whether through video conference or live meetings, if you want to convey your message effectively and do an outstanding job, this course equips you with the skills to be a better creator and presenter. Check out the testimonials on our website. The results speak for themselves. During my time in the corporate world, I often wished I had the opportunity to access such courses at the beginning, making my learning experience quicker. And now, one further topic before we jump back to the conversation. For those of you resonating with the themes of health, happiness, and planet, discover information about our 3-day retreat in Spain by reaching out to my team at the email address hhp@wave-bef.com. You will obtain further information about our life-changing retreat held once a year, together with some of our remarkable podcast guests. Each retreat is unique, leaving you energized with a set of simple tools to take control of your health and happiness sustainably. And the best part, you will be surrounded by like-minded individuals, ending the retreat with a personal action plan shared regularly within the group. Connected to all of that, what you're doing with GenV, you have also initiated a podcast. I think it was 2025, right? You started with the podcast?
We launched the podcast at the beginning of this year, yeah.
Okay, well, congratulations to that. I think it's called Raising GenV.
That's right.
Because you also became a mom, and therefore you, in your pregnancy, you were also vegan. So this is also a lot of things that perhaps people are quite, I wouldn't say scared, but they're probably still thinking, is this a good thing or not? Because it's something so new, this whole vegan topic and plant-based.
Yeah.
And could you tell us a little bit more about that, and how was the experience for you, and what's your feedback so far with your podcast?
Sure. When I got pregnant, I knew I was going to remain vegan, but I wanted, of course, to be 100% certain that choosing to raise my daughter vegan was also going to be the right choice for her, particularly from a nutritional perspective. So it was a time when, I doubled up on my reading and my research just to make sure that not only was I confident that this was going to be a good way to raise my daughter, but confident that I would be doing it in a way that was optimal. And I just noticed at the time there wasn't a huge amount of resources out there for vegan parents. And even vegan parents that I knew who had kids, they hadn't always chosen to raise their children vegan because they themselves were not sure if it was the right thing to do. This was a famous vegan comedian in the UK. I heard her say on a podcast that although, she had been vegan for 10 plus years, she had chosen not to raise her kid vegan because she didn't want to force her beliefs onto her child. And I just thought that was very peculiar. I think, obviously all parents have to make the right choices for their children, particularly when they're very young, because kids can't make those sorts of choices for themselves. Kids can't get up and cook themselves a meal. We have to do that for them. We have to choose whether we're going to force a vegan lifestyle on them or force a carnivorous lifestyle on them, right? Whatever we choose for them, you could characterize as forcing, but it's just giving them what we feel is best. That's it. So if there's a vegan parent out there that's not giving their child a vegan diet, then they clearly don't feel it's best. And given that I have done the research and seen the data and now have living proof that that is a fantastic way to raise a child, I have to assume that they just don't have the knowledge, basically, the knowledge to have conviction in raising their children vegan. So I wanted to provide that kind of reassurance through the podcast. I wanted to give this reassurance, but also let other parents know that it's okay to not know all the answers. It's okay to be worried about these things. And it's okay if you try to raise your child vegan and they ultimately decide they don't want to be. It's okay, right? But I think they have to realize that raising their child vegan is nutritionally adequate. And it has a lot of other benefits too. I mean, you're teaching them not to limit their circle of compassion, which I think is really, really important. I don't think any child would choose to eat a pig unless at some point a parent or somebody they looked up to had told them that it was okay to do so. And we only say it's okay to do so because somebody else told them it was okay to do so. But I think naturally, there are no limits to our compassion. A child sees a pig or a dog, they don't instinctively feel that they should pet one and eat the other. It's just something they've learned over time. They've learned to actually shut off their emotion to some animals and not others. And I feel that can happen. If you do allow that to happen with animals, it can happen with human beings too. It can happen even to themselves, where they feel that they're not allowed to express the emotions that they're feeling, or that it's okay to discriminate against another human because maybe they look different or they have a disability. And so I just think all this stuff, we need to talk about it. We need to talk about the health benefits of raising a vegan child, but we also need to talk about the other benefits and the potential detriments of raising children to limit their compassion, raising them without a good knowledge of where their food comes from, raising them to think that some creatures on this earth are worthy of our compassion, but others are not. Yeah, so it's a resource, it's a form of assurance, it's a form of solidarity, but it's just a place where we can discuss these topics in a non-judgmental way, where I can discuss these topics with not only medical experts, but other parents who have gone along that journey and found out that whether you're a vegan parent or not, parenting is hard, right? It's hard. And I think just by having this resource, it's maybe a little bit less hard for those that are wondering how to raise their children with a philosophy of kindness.
Exactly. Wow, that's so powerful. I mean, my daughter is now 16, and when she was, I think she was probably 8 years old, roundabout. I just came back from a plant-based restaurant, and they were handing out some pamphlets with just showing what happens to the animals who are getting slaughtered, and there was some visuals in that pamphlet with some blood on it. And I just had it lying around on the table when I came back. And then my daughter, as a little girl, was just walking by and just looked at it and saw all this blood and saw the animals. And she's like, yeah, but what is this? And I told her, well, that's where our food comes. Yeah. And she was so shocked to know that, to get that link between, seeing her books of the farms and the little cows and everything. And then to say, wait a minute, that's the things that I'm getting from the supermarket. When she realized that, she told us, okay, she's never, ever again going to eat meat again. So it was not even us telling her, it was her own decision at that time when she said, never again. We couldn't get her yet fully into vegan, but therefore she has been vegetarian since then. And it has been quite tough as a parent to see how kids have to struggle nowadays when they go to birthday parties, or if they get bullied by their friends in school, or if the school offers a vegan meal. And for example, when they're serving the food to the children and they have, let's say, salads, potatoes, and chicken breast, and then they say, oh, you're the kid, the vegan one, then they just give the same meal and they just take the chicken breast away, and okay, you only have the little bit of potato and salad left over, and you just have less what the other kids get. So sometimes it's like, wow, as a parent, if you want to raise your children in that environment, it's still very challenging. So that's why I think it's so valuable to have this type of podcast where not only you speak with parents, but you also get the assurance from the doctors that what we are doing is the right thing and it's not harming our kids. It's actually the opposite, especially if we look at the data and statistics of how many children today are so ill and are already getting things that they should get maybe in their 50s or 60s, but they're already getting it now when they're so young. So therefore, thanks also for creating that platform for us to learn more as parents.
I think vegan parents are doing a great job of worrying more about the values they're instilling in their children than the social pressure to fit in. I think kids can be mean and they'll find any reason to pick on another kid, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't a vegan in school, but there were still things people could find about me to, point out and laugh about. So I think no matter what, kids are going to probably have a rough time in school at some point. So, being vegan is whatever. But yeah, I think it's treated as if it's like odd, right? I think it's really progressive. It's a really nice thing. If I took my daughter into school and said, we don't use any plastic stuff, we're just using recycled stuff. So, if you're going to be serving her food, don't give it on something that she can't recycle. They would be like, oh, that's really cool. But you go in and say, we're only eating things that, don't create suffering. They go, oh, okay, well, yeah, you're going to have to bring in your own food then, and this, that, and the other, and we're going to have to exclude them from pizza day. And it's like, yeah, why are we not celebrating this beautiful choice for our children and supporting it better? Why are we creating this kind of feeling of ostracization for vegan kids?
Exactly. Wow. Yeah, I could tell you a lot of stories and to the audience in this podcast of all the things that we had to think about as parents to say, how are we going to deal with that situation now, either with the school or with a parent or for a party that she was attending. And so that's, I think, an episode alone probably that we could dive into.
Sure.
There was something that we mentioned at the beginning of this conversation was about the $1 million or £1 million that was offered to famous people around the world And that is if they would go vegan for a month. So could you tell us a little bit about this? Because it's so intriguing. I mean, just hearing of the title of that, it's just amazing. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah. Well, I guess first of all, it's like, would a person of significant influence be willing to go vegan for $1 million, right? €1 million? Now, it might seem on the outside like we're trying to buy somebody into going vegan, but actually, in every case that we've offered this kind of financial incentive, we've actually offered to donate it to the charity of their choice. So we're actually offering them a chance to adopt a diet that's going to do good in the world.
Yeah.
And at the same time, get a chunk of money that can do a lot of good in the world.
Win-win.
Given that we're asking people who say that they care about the people of the world and the animals and the planet, this should be a no-brainer. And yet, knowingly, we launch these campaigns thinking they're still gonna not do it because they're too afraid. They're too afraid of what other people think. So afraid that they'll turn down a huge opportunity to do good in the world because they're worried about their public image. And this is the problem we have. So we're in one way giving an incredible opportunity to somebody of influence, and taking that opportunity would probably have an exponential impact and influence over other people doing the same. And at the same time, we're exposing the hypocrisy and the inability of our world leaders to set an example because of the political ties that they have, because of the image they're trying to curate, because, you know, they're afraid of not having their next political campaign funded by big meat. It's just so it's exposing the fact that our world leaders are not willing to or cannot step up for us, and that we have to take action ourselves if we want to see change in the world. And at the same time, you know, it's also generating a lot of publicity around the why we're asking, right? So we always ask with a very public reason why. In the case of Pope Francis, you know, when he came into his position, he wrote an encyclical letter called Laudato Si, in which he repeatedly talks about the need for us to eradicate factory farming, one of the great evils of the world, in which he repeatedly talks about the need for us to tackle climate change. And so we said, hey, did you know, Pope Francis, that you can do both of those things that you care so deeply about by adopting and promoting a vegan lifestyle? And yet no, still, he felt unable to do that small thing, right? And also to receive €1 million for the charities of his choice. And I think it was a very successful campaign, as have all the campaigns been in their ability to generate mainstream attention for the issue, for the reason why we're asking, and why a vegan diet will support the eradication of those issues. And at the same time, you know, exposed the fact that leaders will not fix our problems. Only we can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we are so many billion of us in this planet, and I think all of us need to make a decision probably about 3 to 4 times a day. What am I going to eat now? What am I going to eat for lunch? What am I going to eat for dinner? So every time you make that question in your head, then you're making a decision whether I'm going to help the planet, I'm going to help our environment, my health, if I'm going to give money to another person to kill one of our friends, which is our animals here living with us in this beautiful world. So it's a decision that so many billion of us can do every single day, many times a day. So I think that is definitely in the numbers we would win, if we can really open the eyes of so many.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel helpless because these problems are so huge, and we individually are just one, right? But as you say, it's about enough ones becoming a collective. And previously, like when, you know, society took on the tobacco industry and wanted to give women the vote and wanted to eradicate slavery, it actually didn't take 100% of the population to be behind that push, that change. It actually, the tipping point, you know, is around 22%. So you only need that number of people for something to not be seen as like a fringe idea anymore, but to become a normalized concept. So I think, one, we have to remember that we're not trying to get the whole world to go vegan, which, you know, is an unrealistic goal, I think, at this point in time. We just got to get most people on board with the idea that it's a good thing. And secondly, we do have huge power as individuals. I mean, if you're somebody that goes out and votes, and everybody should be, right? Some people will say to me, oh, I'm not interested in politics. Well, you should be, because politics affects everything. Everything you do is politics, right? Every choice you make is a political choice. So if you are somebody that votes or cares about anything, then you have to remember that every time you spend $1 or €1 or £1 of your money, that is a vote for the type of world you want to see. Yep. So every time you go into H&M and you spend $20 on a cheap piece of fast fashion, you're saying, I'm okay with the fact that people are being exploited in an Asian country to produce this garment, because for me, having this item of clothing is more important to me than human rights. Right? Mm-hmm. That is what you're saying. And you may not know that you're saying it, and you may not think that you're saying it, but by giving money to a corporation that does these things, you are allowing them to continue. You are supporting them. You're saying, here's $1, keep doing what you're doing, right? Yeah. And people have to remember that whenever you say, yeah, I'll take some pepperoni on my pizza, you're saying to Big Ag, you know what? Keep doing what you're doing. Keep ramming animals into factory farms and putting us at risk of pandemics and destroying our rivers and our oceans and chopping down the rainforest and creating huge amounts of animal and human suffering because I want this pepperoni. Yeah. And just people don't realize that money, every time you spend money with a corporation that creates suffering, you are allowing it to continue. You are telling them you support that suffering. And people might think, well, oh God, what, surely that I can't buy anything from anywhere. You can actually. Creating suffering is, it's not just a I am or I'm not, it's a scale. I think there's no way to eliminate suffering. Every choice we make has an impact. But wow, there are such a spectrum on the choice scale of what creates massive amounts of suffering and what creates minimal. And it's about trying to make the best choice possible with the options that we have. And some people have a lot of options, right? I have a lot of options. I live near a Whole Foods and I have the great privilege of being able to go and buy my food there. And so I can easily make low impact choices. Some people can't, but for every one of us that can, it is our moral obligation to do that if we care.
Yeah. It was so good to see your point of view on that, because I think a lot of people haven't looked at it from that angle. And if we know that each one of us are working so hard to earn our money, and where do we want to put our money? Each dollar, as you said, each coin that we give out, what am I sponsoring with that? Yeah, what did I work for in order to sponsor with that money that I'm handing out now to the next person or to the next company? And that really is super important to know or to think about. Yeah. And that is where you can go into so many rabbit holes where you can say, well, let me start thinking. And many times I just realize that people, or at least that happened to me when I had that transition to become vegan, that I just started asking other questions. And these kind of questions, I never came into my mind until I was vegan. And I was thinking, wow, how come I'm asking now somehow the right questions? Why didn't I ask that before? And it could be about any type of topic. And that's why I even think if these political persons or if these important VIPs in the world would be plant-based and would be vegan, then I think that even the decisions that they would make in their career or in their position will be totally other type of decisions.
Right.
Because the way how I decide today is a totally different way how I decided 20 years ago or 15 years ago. And and that's why I think if there's a decision to make, there will be more coming from an area of compassion and love than from an area of ego and almost getting more power. And so it's coming your decisions from a different place. Yeah. When
right. Really is. Yeah, really is. It's a complete mindset shift. And it's not hard to live in that mindset. It's not hard. It might be slightly less convenient at times, but it's not hard. It's actually very rewarding to know that when you spend money, you're spending it in good places because you've actually just thought about it for a few seconds or done a little bit of research before you've made that purchase. It's really changed the way I act as a consumer on every level. I used to think, wow, it's cheap, therefore that's good. Now I think, why is it cheap? Why is it so cheap? Yeah. Who is suffering because of this price point?
Exactly. That's right. And I'm very curious, Who from the famous people that you reached out to from GenV took the challenge of saying, I will do it and I will distribute these 1 million to the charity of my choice? Was there anybody?
Nobody. No. I mean,
Really? Well, okay.
We've had different types
Uh-huh.
of responses.
Yeah.
When we asked the Pope, he actually invited our campaign ambassador, Genesis Butler, to the Vatican for a meeting with his team. And they listened to her, they heard her out. And afterwards, they sent her a letter saying, thank you so much for caring about the planet. The Pope blesses you. You know, it's like, well, thanks, but that's not what we asked for. So it was just kind of a avoidance. It's kind of like, I want to be the good guy, but I'm not going to give up my beef tacos to save the world. That would be crazy, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Same when we challenged the US president. Again, we knew it wasn't going to happen, but we created a bit of a media frenzy when the reason he gave for not wanting to go vegan was because he couldn't afford to lose any more brain cells, which I was like, again, like, so dumb. That's like, here we have a world leader who doesn't even look at data.
Yeah.
I mean, that's very worrying. We challenged Rishi Sunak, the then Prime Minister of the UK, for a better Britain. We got, again, a letter back saying, thank you so much for caring about the planet, but we're already doing everything within our power to safeguard the future of the planet. Interestingly, this came from the Environmental Secretary of the UK, who also happens to be the owner of one of the large lamb and pork distribution farms in the UK. So slight conflict of interest there, I would say. But there you go. It's just another example of how powerful the big meat industry is. Yeah. And when I talk about big meat industry, for those that don't know, about 90% in the UK and about 86 or 88% in the US of all of our meat and dairy products come from 5 big corporations, right? There's 5 big mega corporations that own all the farms, right? And they cram all the animals into tiny little spaces, and they grow them fast and they kill them fast, and they turn a whopping big profit. For example, Tyson. Tyson is the monopolizer of the pork industry in the US. The CEO of Tyson makes in the region of like 25 million a year as her base salary. The average Tyson farmer who works in the factory farms, we're probably wearing a gas mask so they don't die from all the fumes. They earn somewhere between $15,000 and $30,000 a year, which is actually barely livable. Yeah. So, there's these mega corporations running our meat and dairy industry, and people don't know that fact. They think, a little small farmer loving all on his animals. Yeah, that doesn't really exist anymore. It does on the packet, on the picture, on the clever little marketing image they've got, but it doesn't really exist. It exists in very small amounts and ever smaller each year, because these small scale farmers cannot compete with the turnover of a factory farm. They just can't. So they either have to keep raising their prices, and, people can't pay those prices, and then they go under. So there's actually 50% less small-scale farms in the UK than there were just 10 years ago, because the factory farm model is growing and growing and growing. So it's not just growing because they can churn out meat faster and cheaper. It's growing because they have influence at every single level. What Big Ag does, because it's a multi-billion-dollar operation, is it pays to put politicians in office who will protect their interests and who will suppress anything that might harm their profit margin. Big Tobacco did the same. Big Pharma does the same. They spend millions and millions on lobbying and on funding political candidates that will protect their interests. And that is why no politician in power is even able to do something that would suggest they don't support factory farming, because they're probably in power because of that industry. It's the reason why US can't, shut down the NRA, the National Rifle Association. It's because the National Rifle Association spend millions on getting politicians into power that will support them. That's the deal. That's the world we live in. And it's unfortunate, but it means that our leaders cannot act in our best interests. They have to always be conscious of the corporate powers that put them there and protecting their interests first.
Yeah, and that's why probably the subsidies that the governments are doing is just on subsidizing the wrong type of products. Why would a person who want to eat a healthy meal have to pay more money than a person who goes to McDonald's or somewhere to get a burger?
Right.
It's like, wait a minute, how is this even possible that meat is cheaper to buy than my salad that I'm getting at Whole Foods?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, people think it's cheaper to buy, but it's the reason why their taxes are always increasing, because we have to keep paying more and more to cover the growing healthcare costs of our sick nation and the increasing cost of the climate change impacts. So yeah, these foods come at a cost. It's just not a direct cost. Our taxes are as high as they are because healthcare is as high as it is because people are living on a really sad diet that's heavy in meat and dairy. So people don't realize that when you pay cheap in one place, you pay the price in another.
Yeah. And then suddenly you dive into the other rabbit hole, which is the big pharma, where they do not profit if you're dead, but they also do not profit if you're healthy. So you need to be somewhere in that gray zone. Yeah,
you need to be a little bit sick.
Yeah,
and you need to stay there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's really sad. I mean, I actually used to work in a heart hospital, and it blew my mind how many people would come in with blocked arteries, and they would suggest surgery and a lifetime of medication. And there was like zero conversation about, hey, have you thought about not eating bacon so that you don't continue to have to come back for bypass surgery? But it's just not discussed because it's not in the UK, but or in Europe, but in the US, hospitals are a big for-profit industry. Every time a person has a surgery, a bypass surgery, or comes in with cancer or diabetes or any of the many diseases that are massively influenced by our lifestyle choices, they turn a good profit from that. The insurance premiums we pay them, and so why would they not want to keep people coming back for surgery when that's the only way they make their money? Why promote people getting better when they can just keep them sick?
Exactly. One family member very close to me just got operated on the heart, open heart surgery. And after that, I asked my family member, and did the doctor say what you're supposed to eat after this? And he's like, no, he told me I just can live my life as I've been living my life. And if I get sick again, he will just operate me again. He will just fix me. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, just fix me. Yeah, exactly. It's a shame because a lot of people think that if they have like a stent put in, then they're fixed, right? They're fixed. But you're not fixed, right? That's like there's a leak in your bathroom, right? And instead of replacing the pipe or figure out where the leak is coming from, you're just like going to put a plug on it, right?
Exactly.
You're going to put a plug on it. The pressure is going to continue to build and that water is just going to burst out somewhere else. It's this bad habit we have of mopping up the floor when there's a spill rather than turning off the tap. It's a really bad habit we've gotten into, and it's become so normalized that, people will come out of hospital having had a heart attack and surviving and saying, I'm good now. It's like, unless you change the thing that got you to that state in the first place, then you are not good at all.
And what's even more surprising to me is what they gave him after he got out of the operation, the meal that he got from the hospital. I'm like, wow, how can they even serve you that, which is what brought you here in the first place?
Yeah, I can't imagine. And in the US, there's actually like branches of KFC and Subway and McDonald's inside the hospitals. It's bananas. It's bananas. God. Yeah.
They sure know how to do their business case to earn more profits.
Yeah, it is a great business model.
Business model, exactly. Wow. So, okay, we're getting almost to the end, even though I have another 100 questions ahead of me, but I do have a few final questions. So what would you say is at the moment the most exciting project you are working on with GenV?
Oh, good question. So we are planning another big campaign. We just really want to expose Big Ag, right? Yeah. Big Ag has been on a smear campaign against the vegan and the plant-based food movement for a long time. And it seems to have had, really negative impact on plant-based food sales. They've been spreading these malicious rumors that, plant-based foods are ultra processed and bad for you, and that, we need to go back to eating animals because it's natural and nutritious. There's been a rise in the carnivore diet being promoted across social media. There's a lot of recidivism in the world. A lot of people kind of thinking, oh, I'm not sure anymore if a vegan lifestyle is the best lifestyle for me, and dropping off the wagon. And I do believe very strongly that this is all because of the massive amounts of money Big Ag is putting into smear campaigns and spreading misinformation and promoting its own interests. So I'm really excited to be working on a campaign that's going to expose Big Ag and all the terrible things that it's doing to us, and hopefully shifting the needle on how people look at the meat industry and shift people back towards a more positive perception of plant-based foods.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, sometimes I even have like that vision in my head that I wish I could just bring people to a farm just to experience. Yeah, like what is it that happens backstage? Yeah, what is it really that's happening out there? Would you still want to be eating what you're eating, or will it do something to you? And that's wow. And I think that's why also a lot of farms do not even allow that people just get into the farm, because they do not want people to see what's really happening.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
It's so great that we're trying to spread the word and the awareness for everyone. And one thing that I've seen on your website, which was very interesting, was about the Earthshot prize. Could you give us just a short information about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we, last year, I think it was, we did another one of our million challenges. We challenged Prince William to add a category for plant-based foods to the Earthshot prize. For those that don't know, Earthshot is a sort of environmental awards platform where each year they pick 5 organizations doing great things to protect the planet and our oceans and our rainforests and whatnot. But there was never any recognition for what the plant-based movement is doing for all of those categories, right? So we offered basically to fund the £1 million prize. Each category has a prize. We offered to fund one for the plant-based movement. And we were very public with this offer, which they didn't like very much, backed them into a corner a little bit, but they came to us and said, well, we can't add on another category, and God forbid we should give that much attention to the plant-based movement, but we would like to invite you to become an official nominator for the Earthshot prize. So yeah, GenV became the first vegan organization to become a nominator, and that simply means that we can help to identify organizations that are eligible to be considered for the Earthshot prize. So we nominated 66 vegan organizations last year.
Wow.
2 of which got close to the final, but none of which were selected, sadly. We've nominated another 20 this year, and we'll find out, I think, at the end of the summer, if any of those have been selected as finalists. So it's a step in the right direction, and we're really pleased to be able to kind of have a say on what types of organizations they're considering for the prize. But it's a long way from where we want to be. We, the rest of the movement, would like to see the discussion around animal agriculture and its impact on the planet at the forefront of discussions at things like the Earthshot Awards and at the COP gatherings. And it's just not, it's barely mentioned. It's often an afterthought, if a thought at all. People are just talking about fossil fuels, about recycling, about
electric cars.
Electric cars, finding more sustainable ways to cram animals into confinement. It's just not enough. It's baby steps in a world that needs absolute leaps and bounds to get us where we need to be. Climate change is happening right now all around us. People are suffering. And so I don't know what it's going to take to get this level of influence on climate change to start addressing the cow in the room. But, we're hoping to help to do that through our partnership with Earthshot.
Yeah, fantastic. Wow, congratulations on that. And
Thanks.
It's all going the right direction. And therefore, my final question for today is the same question I have for all my guests who come to the show is, what is your definition of happiness?
Oh, wow. That's that's a big question. I think, I'm 41 now. So I, for a long time, thought happiness was a destination, place you could get to and then be in a constant state of, right? Now I don't think it is. I think happiness is something you can derive from multiple things. So where we find our happiness where we think we find our happiness is not often where it actually can be found. I used to think happiness could be found in, being in the perfect relationship, being in a lovely house, going on amazing holidays, buying the latest designer handbag. Now I realize actually those are just like dopamine hits, right? I think most profound forms of happiness I have found have been from helping others, from doing good in the world, from being amongst nature, from being present, and from sharing what I know with my daughter and watching her take her place in the world and do good in the world as well. So yeah, I would say for me, happiness is found in doing things that make you feel like you have a purpose on this world and that purpose is achieving good.
Nice summary to that definition. Thank you so much for explaining us so many things today in this podcast. And I'm so grateful for the time that we spent together. And I think this is totally different to the way, if I think when I was in the corporate world, that you are your whole day you're in meetings, and then you get back to your home and you're having dinner with your family, and you're just and they say, so how was your day today? And you just think, well, I was in meetings the whole day. I don't even know what is it that I did today that brought some good to the world. And if we're doing podcasts like this, it's a 60-minute recording, but that 60 minutes that I was in a meeting that nobody would even remember 2 weeks later or 2 months later, at least this time that we spent together here in this episode, I hope it's going to be for many, many years to come, that people can always listen to this recording and hopefully have better vision on what to do next in their next decision, which is maybe what's going to be my next meal.
Yeah, exactly. And as I said, let them start by asking what matters to me.
Yeah.
What matters to me? What is the sort of world I would like to see? And if you have children, ask yourself what sort of world you want them to inherit, and then think about what you are doing that does not support that choice, and maybe reconsider those choices.
Absolutely. So it's all about how can we leave this place a better place than when we got it, and just to think about our kids, our children, grandchildren, when they look at us and to say, hey, granddad, hey, grandma, thanks for leaving this behind. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, what is this? Is it going to be something good or something bad? Yeah. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. We have this huge responsibility, right? To not be the generation that absolutely destroys the future of our children.
Yeah.
So it's a big responsibility. We've got to take it seriously.
Exactly. So thank you so much, Naomi. And I'm looking forward to seeing all those amazing projects that you're doing with your team together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Juan. Thanks for having me.
Same here. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
What an inspiring and eye-opening conversation with Naomi. From the deeply personal roots of her vegan journey to the wide-reaching impact of her advocacy through Generation Vegan and raising GenV, Naomi reminds us that change often starts at home, with the values we pass on to our children and the choices we make every day. We touched so many topics today: the ethical and health motivations behind a plant-based lifestyle, the importance of making veganism accessible and inclusive, and the very real challenges and joys of raising compassionate kids in a predominantly non-vegan world. Naomi's message is clear. Veganism isn't just a diet. It's a statement of empathy, responsibility, and hope for a better future. Whether you're a parent, an advocate, or simply someone curious about a more conscious way of living, I hope this episode left you feeling empowered to explore how your choices can ripple out and create meaningful change for your health, for the planet, and for all beings. Thank you so much for joining us on Health, Happiness, and Planet. If you found this episode valuable, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might need a little inspiration today. And don't forget to check out Naomi's fantastic homepage and her podcast called Raising GenV for more honest conversations around vegan parenting and compassionate living. Until next time, stay curious and keep making choices that nourish your body, your soul, and the world around you. Big hugs, everyone!